Homestead, and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going over an interesting encounter that President John Taylor, prophet of the church, had with a Baron Rothschild, and they spoke together about the purpose of temples. And it's a really fascinating thing. Now, I had come across this before, actually. I think someone put it in the comments. I'm not sure. I can't remember when I saw it. But I've been actually wanting to find this. So thank you to Marilyn Sams, who commented the source for this thing that I'm about to read you. Okay. Now, you guys, I know, I already know. Okay, you don't need to educate me about Rothschild or secret combinations or whatever. And frankly, I don't like to paint with broad strokes. Okay. There's a lot you can talk about with this topic, and I don't see any particular organization or family or anything in black and white terms. Okay, and aside from that, it's complicated. So I can already hear the comments. There's me. I want you to know that I know. I'm not naive. I'm not ignorant to this. I'm all about secret combinations. I know all about it. So just put that to the side for just a second, and we're going to read out of this. So this book is called The Gospel Kingdom, Writings and Discourses by John Taylor. Okay, I have it up here on Internet Archive, and we're just going to read this short section. Before I do, I wanted to try and narrow down who this was exactly that he was speaking to, because there wasn't just one Rothschild. That's the last name for a whole family. So John Taylor, he was president of the church from 1880 to 1887. This story, I can't really tell when this occurred, other than the fact that he said some time ago. So I don't know if this was before he was prophet. But, I did a search. The guy's name, according to John Taylor, he just says Baron Rothschild. And Baron not being the first name, Baron being the title, right? He's a Baron. So Baron Rothschild. So I did what I could to try and figure this out. When you do a search for Baron Rothschild on Wikipedia, it takes you to the Rothschild family that has the title of Baron. They are a part of the Rothschild banking family. You come down here. These people in the Barons Rothschild, 1885, these are British. These are British Rothschilds. And according to John Taylor, he says here that the one that he was speaking to was a Frenchman. Okay, so I knew that it couldn't be part of this group right here. So I did a search. Okay, I did a search for, because when you click on Rothschild banking family, it takes you here, and you have the British branch, the French branches, Austrian branch, Neapolitan branch. Okay, and they're all Jewish, by the way. Okay, they're all Jewish. And sometimes I feel like that's the reason why people put forward a lot of these theories about them. So this is something I don't really like to. I don't know. I think it's complex. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. But so anyway, I looked at the French branch. Okay, so here we are, the French branch, the page for the Rothschild banking family of France. I did a search for Baron, and it says here in 1822, the influential James and his 4 brothers were awarded the hereditary title of Baron by Emperor Francis I of Austria. And then when you come down here, here's a list of family members, and there's 2 James. One would have been, I think, too young at the time. He only would have been like 9 or 10 years old to talk to John Taylor. So I was assuming that it was this one right here. I pulled him up. James Mayer de Rothschild. Okay. Was a German-French banker and the founder of the French branch of the Rothschild family. So that's interesting. The founder of the French branch. So he holds a pivotal or interesting part of the family history. Philanthropy. De Rothschild also used his enormous wealth for philanthropic works and became a leader of the French Jewish community. So he was a leader among French Jews. And then his funeral. It said, well, I highlighted this because it says here Baron James de Rothschild died in 1868. Okay, so if he died in 1868, then it was probably during the time when President Taylor was a member of the Quorum of the 12. So not president of the church yet. And that's if I have the right person. But I do think that this is the right person. James Mayer de Rothschild. Now again, before I read this, if you've never heard the name Rothschild or you don't understand the connection between them and Israel, let me just give you a flavor of that in two things. The first thing is the Balfour Declaration. What is that? November 2nd, 1917. Statement of British support for, quote, the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, end quote. It was made in a letter from Arthur James Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary, to Lionel Walter Rothschild, 2nd Baron Rothschild of Tring, a leader of the Anglo-Jewish community. So this would have been probably the British counterpart to James. So he was in Britain, a leader among the British Jewish community. He received this letter from the Foreign Secretary. Okay, and there's a few things about this. The declaration specifically stipulated that, quote, nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. So mostly the Arabs there and Samaritans and stuff like that. The document, however, said nothing of the political or national rights of these communities and did not refer to them by name. Nevertheless, the declaration aroused enthusiastic hopes among Zionists and seemed the fulfillment of the aims of the World Zionist Organization. The British government hoped that the declaration would rally Jewish opinion. So this is what Britain would have gotten out of it. For anyone that wasn't doing it for spiritual reasons, if they're, anyone among the British that were doing it for political reasons, this would be what they were getting out of it. The British government hoped that the declaration would rally Jewish opinion, especially in the United States, to the side of the Allied powers against the Central Powers during World War I. They hoped also that the statement in Palestine of a pro-British Jewish population might help to protect the approaches to the Suez Canal in neighboring Egypt, and thus ensure a vital communication route to British colonial possessions in India. Let's just look at the map really quick. Suez Canal. I'm sure most of you already know it, but right here, this is the Suez Canal. If you zoom out, you have Egypt right here. They have the Sinai Peninsula right here. But anyway, you see how close Israel is to the Suez Canal, even though it goes through Egypt. And so back then, well, I guess even still today, I know it's still important today, obviously. I think it was the Suez Canal where there was that big, like you had the ships getting stuck or whatever, that made news, I think. I don't think it was this year. I think it was last year. I can't remember. But anyway, you have the UK right here. And so by water, you can see that the quickest way to get to India would be you come down here, you go here between the pillars of Hercules. I can't remember what this is actually. Well, the Gibraltar, right? I think of it as the Pillars of Hercules because it's also called that. Anyway, you go through there between Spain and Morocco. You sail through the Mediterranean Sea. You come through the Suez Canal right here. Sail through the Red Sea into the Gulf of Aden, and then voila, you are at India. Okay, so this right here, this canal was of key interest to Britain at the time, and I'm sure that it probably still is, as well as much of the rest of Europe and other countries. So so um, that was their interest in it, right? We could have an ally there that could help secure basically the Suez Canal, help protect it. The Balfour Declaration was endorsed by the principal Allied powers, okay, so the Allies, and was included in the British Mandate over Palestine. So the British Mandate is what happened after World War II. After the war was won, they had the mandate of these lands that used to belong to the Ottoman Empire because they were defeated. The Ottoman Empire was part of the Central Powers. So Britain was in charge, basically, of the Middle East. So anyway, the British mandate over Palestine so the Balfour Declaration was formally approved by the newly created League of Nations on July 24th, 1922. So the League of Nations, as we all know, that was the predecessor to the United Nations. So basically the UN at the time approved the Balfour Declaration. Okay? And so you can see that the Rothschilds played a big role in that, that they were considered leaders in that movement and so on and so forth. There's a thing here from the Israel Forever Foundation that kind of expands on this a little bit. It says, but the real threat was still to come. The keynote address would strike a chord with me. I don't think I will soon forget. The Balfour Declaration was issued to one man in particular, the second Baron Rothschild, Lord Walter Rothschild. His great-nephew, the current heir to the legendary dynasty, the fourth Baron Jacob Rothschild, addressed the crowd, and his elegance and prestige was palpable. It would not be an exaggeration to claim the existence of the old Yishuv and the prosperity of the new Yishuv would not have been possible without the efforts of this great family. So you can see how they look at them, right? Furthermore, you may or may not have known this, but the Israeli Knesset building was made possible, or at least a lot of the funding came from the Rothschild family. The Knesset is basically their the Congress, right? It's their legislative branch. So this is in the Jerusalem Post, and I just want to read this little section here. The Knesset building was built because of the largesse. I don't know what that word is. Largesse. I'm not sure, and I don't care how it's pronounced, by the way. Of James Jimmy de Rothschild, son of Lord Edmund James de Rothschild. Jimmy followed in the tradition of his father, was an extremely generous philanthropist. In 1957, shortly before his death, Jimmy de Rothschild told Israel's first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, that he would contribute 6 million Israeli pounds, then called lira, toward the building of the permanent home for the Knesset in Jerusalem. Okay, so I feel like this context is necessary to really understand what was happening here when John Taylor was talking to Baron James Mayer de Rothschild. Okay, this is who he was talking to, a very influential person in the Jewish community and also in the banking community, person with power. Okay, so a look forward. This is in a chapter that's talking about temples. Okay, in looking, excuse me. Let's zoom in like this. Give me a second in case you want to follow along. Okay. In looking still forward, we find that there are other things ahead of us. One thing is the building of temples, and that is a very important item and ought to rest with force upon the minds of all good saints. Conversation with Rothschild. I remember some time ago having a conversation with Baron Rothschild, a Jew. He was I was showing him the temple here, and said he, Elder Taylor, what do you mean by this temple? What is the object of it? Why are you building it? I said, your fathers had among them prophets who revealed to them the mind and will of God. We have among us prophets who reveal to us the mind and will of God, as they did. One of your prophets said, the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple. But who may abide the day of his coming? For he shall sit as a refiner's fire and a purifier of silver. Now, said I, sir, will you point me out a place on the face of the earth where God has a temple? And we just did a video about this. This is found in Malachi chapter 3, verse 1, right? Talking about a future temple. Of course, some people, other Christian denominations read that differently, and that's addressed by a number of LDS websites. But anyway, said he, I do not know of any. And then John Taylor, you remember the words of your prophets that I have quoted? Said he, yes, I know the prophet said that, but I do not know of any temple anywhere. Do you consider that this is that temple? John Taylor, no, sir, it is not. Rothschild, well, what is this temple for? Said I, the Lord has told us to build this temple so that we may administer therein baptisms for our dead, which I explained to him, and also to perform some of the sacred matrimonial alliances and covenants that we believe in that are rejected by the world generally, but which are among the purest, most exalting and ennobling principles that God has ever revealed to man. Rothschild, well then, this is not our temple? John Taylor, no, but you will build a temple for the Lord. You will build the temple, for the Lord has shown us, among other things, that you Jews have quite a role to perform in the latter days, and that all the things spoken by your old prophets will be fulfilled, that you will be gathered to old Jerusalem, and that you will build a temple there. And when you build that temple, the time has arrived, the Lord who ye seek will suddenly come to his temple. Do you believe in the Messiah? Rothschild, yes. John Taylor, do you remember reading in your old prophets something like this? They shall look upon him whom they have pierced and mourn, and be in bitterness for him, as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. And one shall say, what are these wounds in thine hands and in thine side? And in thy side. And he will say, these with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. Rothschild, is that in our Bible? John Taylor, yes, sir, that is in your Bible. I spoke to him then about the Nephites having left Jerusalem and told him that the Book of Mormon represents them as descendants of their people, and that Jesus came among them, and that they, because of their iniquity and departure from the word and law of God, were stricken with blackness. Said he, what as Cain was? And John Taylor, yes, sir, as Cain was. Said I, these people, the Lamanites, according to this record, a French copy of which I gave... Oh, I gotta borrow it again. My hour is up. Bear with me for just one moment as we... Okay. Here we are. Okay, zoom in. Okay, him. He being a Frenchman. Quote, this people are beginning to... Let me make sure I'm in the right spot. A French copy of which I gave him, he being a Frenchman. And then Rothschild, well, actually, who's saying this? Oh, okay, this is still John Taylor. This people are beginning to feel after these things, and they are coming by hundreds and by thousands and demanding baptism out of our hands, just as you find recorded in that book that they would do. And that is given there as a sign that God's work has commenced among all nations. Said he, what evidence have you of this? This conversation took place in the Townsend house, and when the Baron asked me for evidence, said I, Sir, if you will excuse me a few minutes, I will give you some evidence. And I went to Savage's bookstand in the Townsend house and obtained a photographic copy of David Cannon baptizing Native Americans, standing in the midst of a great crowd of them. Said I, here is the evidence. Rothschild, well, what shall we do? John Taylor, said I, you can do nothing unless God directs. You as a people are tied hand and foot and have been for generations, and you can't move a peg unless God strikes off your fetters. When he says the word, the things spoken of by the prophets will be fulfilled. Then the measuring line will go forth again in Jerusalem. Then your Messiah will come, and all those things spoken of by the prophets will be fulfilled. I mention these matters to Baron Rothschild merely to exhibit some ideas pertaining to the work in which we are engaged. And in speaking of the temple, quote, well, this is not the temple. No, not that you are going to build. This is ours. And we expect to build hundreds of them yet, and to administer in them in carrying out the work of God. End quote. I speak of this that you might reflect a little, you Latter-day Saints. Oh, is this in the Journal of Discourses? I could have just gone there. Journal of Discourses 18. Yeah, well, whatever. Oh, and this was on April 6th, 1876. Okay, so there's the date. So in 76, yeah, he would have been an apostle at that time. 76. So, you know, I know a lot of people like to say all sorts of things about this family. I will say it seems that they've been instrumental in gathering Judah to Israel. And that's a good thing, because that's supposed to happen. Prophecy is being fulfilled. It's always so interesting for me to think about, like, when we read these older quotes and stories and, you know, talks and stuff like that. It's always interesting for me to think about what the world was like back then. And I don't know how impossible it seemed to them in that time that Israel would become a nation in the future. But it's so incredible to live right now in 2022. And Israel's been around for a long time, for over 70 years. I can't remember exactly what year we're on right now, but it hasn't been 80 years yet. But it's amazing, you know. And you see here an apostle talking to a very influential person, a Jew, and a person that belongs to a family that has done these kind of things, you know, help finance the Knesset. What other conversations have been had that we don't know about, right? I don't think that you can find this story on the church website. I could be wrong. I haven't looked for it, but we're not privy to everything that happens. You know, we're lucky to be privy to this story. And again, thank you, Marilyn Sams, for showing me where to find this. So when we talk about warning the world, when we talk about the gospel going to all nations, kindreds and tongues, and the world being warned, you know, being church leaders of a worldwide global church, even back then, think about how big the church was back in the 1870s. How about we take a look, huh? Let's see, LDS population growth, Wikipedia. Okay, what was it at in the 1870s? Let's just do 1878. At that time, there was only 125,000 members of the church. Only 125,000 members. That is tiny. Even though the world population was smaller back then, that is still very small. In fact, let's see. 7-year average growth, percentage growth. Okay, never mind. So you have to think about, now the church is even bigger. I've done videos about all the different people, leaders that President Nelson himself, and under his presidency, the general authorities have been meeting. So I'm pretty sure that the rulers, the kings, the presidents, prime ministers, whatever, I'm pretty sure that they've been sufficiently warned, that they're aware what we're about. And again, who knows what is said that's not recorded for, news articles. But we have this precious gem right here. Who knows how this may or may not have impacted Rothschild, but I'm sure the Lord was instrumental in making this conversation happen. And we learned some interesting things here, because in the mind of John Taylor, it would be the Jews that would build the temple, right? That's in contrast to Bruce R. McConkie, who said that it would be the church that would build it, because the church is the only one that knows how to build temples and what to do with them. So, you see contradictions, and I don't see them as very serious, because whatever is going to happen, the Lord is in charge. So whatever is supposed to happen is going to happen. This isn't something that's going to affect your salvation. It just gives us another possibility. Bruce R. McConkie thinks that it's going to be us that builds the temple, and that very well could be. It could be that the BYU Jerusalem Center, whenever we're allowed to, if we're allowed to, it'll become a temple, or it may happen in the millennium. So, like I said, there could be a temple complex in Jerusalem. It may be that the BYU Jerusalem Center, if the Lord has plans for it to be a temple, maybe he's going to do that after the millennium has started and once the second coming has happened. Maybe we're waiting for the third temple. Maybe we're waiting for that to be built, and I think it's perfectly fine that the Jews build it, because they're going to build it to the best of their abilities and according to the specifications in the Old Testament. And there's nothing that would stop the Lord at a later time dedicating that temple properly and accepting that temple. So it's just interesting that he says that here, though, that the Jews are going to build that temple, and that they have a really important part to play in the last days. So anyway, that's going to be it for this one. Again, one more time, thank you, Marilyn Sams. I'm so glad that you pointed that out to me. I bookmarked it so I can come back to this book and maybe see if there's anything else in here that we can find. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below, and please try and not get into the secret combination stuff. Just not for this video, okay? Also, make sure to share it with anyone that would find this interesting, and I'll talk to you guys later.